Welcome to COASTER-net Uncut.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of COASTER-net Uncut. I'm, of course, Andrew Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois, joined here this evening by my illustrious co-host, Mr. Danny Miller, hailing from Rochester, New York. There I see.
Yeah. How much snow do you have right now? Did you get a lot of snow this past week?
Oh my God, it's ridiculous. There's at least a foot of snow on top of my car this week that I had to clean off.
Oh yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it was funny. We probably had a little over a foot ourselves. I think we had about 16 inches or so, and that was like Sunday night, and nothing got plowed because of the Super Bowl on Sunday.
Yeah.
So then Monday, it was like, oh man, there's 8 inches on the ground already, and none of it's plowed. And then we got it was 16 inches by the end of Monday night. We got a little bit more last night, and I think we're supposed to have another inch or two tonight, and then tomorrow, I think we're supposed to get another 1 to 3. So by the end of this weekend, we might have about 2 feet on the ground. And it's not getting any warmer. It's going to be single digits and negatives. But wait a minute, hold on. I think I'm seeing double here. I'm seeing me twice or you twice.
Wait, what's going on there? That's weird.
What shirt do you have on tonight?
Oh,
okay, that's weird.
Well,
that was bound to happen eventually.
It was bound to happen that I was wearing the same exact shirt. But you know what's interesting about, I chose the Nighthawk shirt because we have an interesting topic tonight, and that topic is intellectual properties and whether or not they are good for a theme park to invest in. So that's what we're going to be looking at is, if a company, a theme park, it brings in these outside characters, outside themings that they technically may or may not own. And whether or not that actually helps the business. And the reason why I chose Nighthawk, and maybe you chose Nighthawk for the same reason, is because originally Nighthawk at Carowinds, now we know it was at California's Great America for a little bit, known as Stealth, which really had no theming at all. But then when it moved to Carowinds, it got this really, really awesome theme. That may be the best themed coaster and paint job too. Maybe the best themed paint job and property ever. The Borg Assimilator. And if you see behind me over here, you can see all my lovely Star Trek ships behind me. Oh, look at that! All the different enterprises. So
Nerds.
Nerds. So you can kind of tell I'm a bit of a Star Trek fan. So. One of the great disappointments in my life, and I don't know if it really is a disappointment, but it is the fact that I never got to ride Nighthawk, or at that time Borg Assimilator, as Borg Assimilator. So,
well, it was still Borg Assimilator.
Yeah, I never got to ride it. But what we're going to talk about tonight is basically, is this a good idea? So I think maybe we should start with the Paramount Parks, because that's an interesting case in and of itself, that we know that Paramount bought these parks and opened up some new parks and applied the Paramount theme to a lot of them. And you would see things like Borg, which was a Paramount movie with Star Trek. You would see things like Tomb Raider, The Italian Job, The Outer Limits. What else was there that I'm missing?
Well, we had this a series of Top Gun. Did you say Top Gun? We had a series of Top Guns. And every park had a Top Gun ride somewhere, except for King's Dominion. I think King's Dominion was really the only one that didn't have a Top Gun themed ride. And then, we had all the Nickelodeon stuff, was, the kids area stuff, which all that's gone now as well. So we saw a variety of, movie properties, kind of go to the theme parks, and show properties move over to the theme parks when the Paramount Parks were still a thing over here. And another one was The Italian Job, which is a movie that a lot of people weren't big fans of, but that's one of my favorite movies. I don't know, were you an Italian Job fan as far as the movie goes, or?
I can tell you I've never seen the film, so.
Oh, okay. So that's well. That was the other critique on it. The other critique on it was that it was a movie that a lot of people didn't see, and the people who did see it didn't like it. I think years ago, when it first was announced for King's Dominion, I think the original five-person crew at Coaster Radio, when they still had 5 hosts, they were doing a show with 4 of the hosts, and 2 of them had not seen the movie. So already you were cutting your demographic in half, just assuming that half of the adults had not seen it. And of the 2 that saw it, I think only 1 actually liked it. So, I really like it. It's one of my favorite movies. The ride itself, probably best described as a family coaster.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of one of those tweener coasters where it's got some good intense moments, but it's not 400 feet tall. It's not going 100 miles an hour. It's going, I don't know what the exact speed is, 45, maybe something in that range. And you're maybe like 50 feet off the ground, but most of the time it's just kind of like quick turns and, abrupt changes in direction. And at the beginning, I think there was some good theming that went along with it, but depending on where the one at Canada's Wonderland, because of the cold weather, most of the special effects don't work, and it's pretty much just kind of sitting there amongst the stuff. Whereas the ones at Kings Island and Kings Dominion have had a little bit better luck with the special effects because they have a more mild climate than Toronto, obviously, so they have a bit of an easier time with the effects. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, and when they do, it's great. When they don't, oh well.
And what's weird is that Italian Job was like this family coaster, but it's my belief that the Italian Job movie was not a family movie, right? Like, was
no,
it?
It absolutely wasn't. For those of you who haven't seen the movie, the general idea is it starts off with it's Mark Wahlberg and Donald Sutherland at the beginning, and Donald Sutherland is essentially, he's kind of like this mob boss kind of guy where they go off and they're performing like heists and not so much robberies, but essentially there is, hey there.
Hey. I don't know what that was. That was my WWE network just started playing for no reason.
That's why it's uncut, right?
It's uncut!
Yeah, okay. So anyway, getting back to things. So the Italian Job, it starts off where they're performing a heist in Venice, where there is a giant safe of like $30 million worth of gold in the safe, and essentially Venice is the city in Italy where it's all canals. Most of the streets are actual canals, and you get through the city via boat. And what they do, they essentially, without getting too much into detail, they essentially blow up the floor where the safe is, and it falls into the water, and they get the gold out, and all of a sudden they have $30 million worth of gold. And it's a team of like 6 guys, and one of the team members, as they're getting it back to the U.S., essentially has his own team of guys hold up the others and essentially kill the others, although there's some of them that make it. And the ones that survive eventually plot to take the gold, back from this other guy. And the whole thing of the movie is to get the gold back from the guy from the original group that took it from all them for himself. And the whole movie is a lot of planning, and it ends with the big car chase scene of them stealing the gold and taking it to their own place with the Mini Coopers. And the Mini Cooper car chase is really the focus of that ride, which is why the Mini Coopers were always the big deal when it was still the Italian Job ride. And if you've seen the movie, they do go through a subway. There is a helicopter scene. They do go through a parking deck. They go down into like the aqueduct and splash into the wall. So the ride itself actually does follow the car chase sequence pretty well. So it's interesting to kind of see the movie and then go to the ride and see how you can say, oh, well, yeah, it does actually follow the movie. Now, with it not having the actual Italian Job name attached to it, first-time riders don't really understand what's supposed to be going on.
Well, yeah, and I
Which
think
is okay.
I think another one that fits that even more, and maybe so much because of how they had to cut it and change it so much, it's not a coaster, but it was Tomb Raider at Kings Island. The Tomb Raider at Kings Dominion
Yes.
pretty much was outside, didn't have a lot of the same themey effects. But the one at Kings Island was all indoors, had all this stuff that was tied directly to the movie. And when Cedar Fair took it over, like they had this window that they could keep the theme in it, and they decided to just rip it all out right away. And then once they took all the Tomb Raider effects out of it, it was just really lame. It just didn't have the same effect anymore.
It became a top spin in a box.
Absolutely.
You put a box over a top spin. That's all.
And it's just like it loses everything. Like they still had a few things here and there. And then, add into the fact that the ride was basically destroying itself because of all the maneuvers that it was doing. But so like I think that's like a perfect example of the bad side of having an intellectual property, because at some point, on paper, Paramount, if they were going to own those parks forever, it would make sense. You can tie movies into what you do. But even when you look at it, the movies they were choosing were not longtime winners. Like Italian Job, Outer Limits, even Tomb Raider to some extent.
Yeah, certainly not those anyway.
No,
the one that I think that really worked was Top Gun, because Top Gun is a favorite amongst a lot of people who grew up in the 80s. It's a good action type movie that I know my parents are big fans of Top Gun. My dad's actually met Meg Ryan. He always jokes about this. When we vacation all the time up on Martha's Vineyard, which is where a lot of your actors and like Obama and Clinton go up there. A lot of the Democrats go up there. And we were at the general store in the town that our house used to be in, and checking out at the register next to my dad was Meg Ryan, and he just kind of he waved and said hi to her, and she said, "Hi, how are you?" And my dad's like, "Oh, Meg Ryan." So, but my grandmother's met Tom Hanks. We saw Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn there one year. We've seen all kinds of folks, but I mean that Top Gun is one of those that I think everybody knows about, and it's like if you kind of said to someone, "Oh, The Italian Job," or "Oh, Tomb Raider," I don't know that they would immediately know what you were talking about. Yeah. Whereas if you say Top Gun, I think that's one that people instantly at least recognize, kind of like a Back to the Future or Ghostbusters. I don't think it's on the level as those two, but I think it's one that people recognize.
The one that cracks me up the most might be the Face Off one. That even when Face Off was in the theater, people didn't know what that movie was. Like, come on!
I didn't even know it was a movie.
It's a classic movie. Wasn't it John Travolta and Nicolas Cage, and they trade faces? Like, they surgically trade faces? I'm like, I don't think it could get any dumber than this.
So it's like Two-Face the flip side. Yes. Like what they did at Six Flags America. They did the same thing. But it's like Top Gun that made some sense for a roller coaster theme, because it's a fighter jet. And that's kind of what you wanted with the inverted roller coaster and the suspended roller coaster. So, I mean, when you look at the 4 Top Gun roller coasters that are now, 3 of them are now, well, 2 of them are flight decks. One is Afterburn, and then the other is now the Bat, but it used to be a flight deck. You had a suspended aero coaster, you had 2 B&M inverts, and then you had a Vekoma SLC at Canada's Wonderland that was supposed to be a B&M invert, but because of the Raptor deal, they couldn't do it. So they ended up having to do an SLC. That's a topic for a different show. But so it at least made some sense to have those being Top Gun themes, and the theming was, there's an airplane here, the station looks like an airplane hangar, there's a control tower looking thing over here, and some radar stuff over here. And, I mean, it's sparsely placed, but it made sense. And, I mean, it still kind of makes sense now to have, flight deck or Afterburn. I mean, it still fits, but it's not something that they would go ahead and do now. It's just something, we have to change the name because we don't have the rights to the name. So we'll keep it to be an airplane theme name. That way the theming still kind of makes sense.
Well, I find it kind of funny now that, it's been how long since Cedar Fair has owned these parks, and now Paramount's talking again.
Almost a decade.
As if they're going to open up another Paramount Park, but this time in England, and they're talking about resurrecting some of these ideas, but not all of them. So they're talking about doing Star Trek and like all these more. I think they realized that their mistake was maybe we shouldn't choose like stupid names for stuff, and just because two people are looking at each other. You need to go with the
iconic stuff that everybody knows.
Like they've even signed on all the BBC shows, which makes sense for England. So you could have a Star Trek area, a Doctor Who area. That there's a lot of people excited about that right now.
Yeah. Now, fun fact. The Carowinds Afterburn that opened in 1996, that originally opened as Top Gun, because the flight deck that the Top Gun that opened at Kings Island, the suspended one opened, that was early 90s, I want to say. I want to say that was like 92. I could be wrong on that one. Sorry if that's wrong. I think it was 92. I know the Great America one in California was 1993. That was one of, if not the first custom B&M inverted coaster. And then the SLC opened in 1995, Canada's Wonderland. The Carowinds one that opened in 96, I believe, that was actually supposed to have a Godzilla theme, because that's when the 90s version of Godzilla was coming out. And when the movie flopped in 1995, they quick turned around and say, nope, we're going to stick to Top Gun. But that ride was supposed to have a Godzilla theme. And when the Godzilla movie flopped, they defaulted back to Top Gun because they knew it was recognizable and they knew that people knew what it was. Because I think Top Gun was a 1986 movie.
Yeah. I
think it was mid to late. I think it was a 86 or 87. So, I mean, that was one that was proven and was still sticking around as. And that Kenny Loggins song there, Danger Zone. I mean, what a great song that is.
Well, Godzilla, as bad as the movie was, had a pretty sweet song in it with Puff Daddy and Jimmy Page. Just happens to be my old wrestling entrance music. That's my theme song, actually. So, I have a soft spot. Actually, before the show started, I was actually listening to the Godzilla soundtrack.
You were listening.
I was getting pumped up for the show by listening to my theme song, a little Jimmy Page, Puff Daddy. But let's shift gears here and let's look at the opposite side of this equation. And when you look at a place that has done an intellectual property almost perfectly, I think you have to start with Universal Studios and talk about Harry Potter.
Absolutely.
Because you can attribute Universal Studios' success right now right to Harry Potter. That's why they are as big as they are. That, Universal Studios itself is kind of floundering. They open up Islands of Adventure, and Islands of Adventure is just one big intellectual property where you had the Marvel superheroes, you had this awesome Jurassic Park area, you had the Dr. Seuss area, and then you had this mythical area that's pretty much been the one area that they created themselves, has been the one area that they've basically taken over by other intellectual properties as the park has expanded. So this mythos area has been overtaken by Harry Potter, has been overtaken by other sections because it doesn't have the same appeal. So here you see a perfect example of how bringing in an outside property can really basically make a park and then revitalize a park at the same time.
Absolutely. And the big discussion has become how much Universal has been on the offensive in the last, several years, and how much, Universal has really taken advantage of the Harry Potter stuff, and they've done it phenomenally. And the fact that it almost ended up at Disney, thinking that Disney could have ended up with Harry Potter is just a scary thought when you think about how popular it's been. Imagine how big that would have been for Disney to actually land that. And the fact that Universal got it, and we're still looking at Disney being way ahead in terms of attendance numbers, but maybe this is the start of Universal getting a little closer. I mean, Universal's attendance has been on the rise ever since the Harry Potter stuff came out, and I think we'll continue to see it rise now with Diagon Alley opening up. And it's interesting, though, because we're going to talk about, when we get into Universal here, we're going to talk a little bit about Marvel and the connection to Disney. And the interesting thing about the Harry Potter deal is Universal is so tightly tied to the contract with J.K. Rowling. I've heard it said before that in the contract, if J.K. Rowling doesn't like something they're doing at Universal, they have 10 days to fix it, or she can yank everything. If they don't fix it within 10 days, they can yank everything. And you think about it. We talk about how Paramount, when the Cedar Fair sale happened, and the Nickelodeon stuff you can get around, you can transfer that to Peanuts, and you just rename the Top Gun rides and you rename the Italian Job rides, and maybe the theming doesn't quite make as much sense if you haven't seen the movie, but it at least works.
Yeah.
If you take Harry Potter off of that stuff, it does not work.
It doesn't work
and
at all.
It cannot work. It's like you could take all the names off of like the shops and stuff, and maybe, I think Evie from Coaster Radio said, okay, you could turn Harry Potter into Hobbit World or whatever. But it wouldn't work with all the names.
No.
You wouldn't be able to use any of those names. Harry Potter and the Wizarding World of Harry Potter and Hogsmeade and Diagon Alley, everything sticks so close to the books and so close to the movies and the names of the restaurants and the names of the food items and just the little ornamental things on the sides of the building. You can't have any of that if she yanks those licenses. You couldn't keep that part of the park open. You couldn't run the train.
Yeah.
The Hogwarts Express you couldn't do. I mean, you couldn't do anything. So I think that's maybe the one danger of getting into something that you don't necessarily own, but Universal has shown that they're committed to essentially granting J.K. Rowling's wish, because they know if they don't, they lose a massive part of what their current appeal is right now. And as long as they stick to that, it's working. And I mean, they're just going down there in hordes.
And I'm you know what? I'm going to have to bring this up too, because you started me on this. So when people ask in 10 minutes why this rant started, you can point back to yourself. And this is exactly why I don't understand why Universal Studios is not investing more money into the Jurassic Park area of Islands of Adventure.
Yes.
I don't
yes.
get it. They own the damn movie. It is their movie. Jurassic Park is a Universal
picture. They can do whatever they want with it.
And
they don't have to worry about it paying a license.
And here we stand on the precipice of the biggest movie of this summer. I guarantee you, people are going to talk about Avengers. People are going to talk about other stuff. Jurassic World will be the biggest movie of this summer. And here we're talking about not a new Jurassic Park ride coming into Islands of Adventure, not an expansion of the Jurassic Park area of Islands of Adventure. What we're talking about is a dumb-ass King Kong ride being placed that is going to be so generic and so stupid that it will not draw a single person to the park. Well, it might draw a single person.
Out of place.
And out of place. So you are decreasing the size of the Jurassic Park area to install this King Kong ride that is essentially just going to be a clone of what they already have in Universal Hollywood. And for what? For what? And you are completely missing this opportunity to build a new Jurassic World ride, something that people have been asking for forever, to expand this dinosaur area. I'm sorry, dinosaurs, and that's something. Obviously, you're not going to lose the rights to that because you own it. But dinosaurs are a timeless type of archetype that kids are always going to love, and that's who you're marketing towards. That you could do a dinosaur Jeep ride, like a safari ride. You could do an indoor mine roller coaster.
Yes, you got to do the safari ride. You got to do the Jeep ride. Come on now. It works over at Disney. Over at Disney. Busch Gardens has one. Why not? Disney has an indoor dinosaur safari ride that they don't repair when it breaks down. There's so many effects that don't work in that. Do one that works. Do one that's better. Do one that's cool. Come on.
I don't know if you know this, but there are there's already concept art out there, but there was a plan on paper at Universal Studios in Florida to do an outdoor safari Jeep ride with animatronic dinosaurs. The plan is already there, and they just threw it out because, it lost its appeal. But now you are standing here on the brink of the biggest movie of the summer, and yet we're talking about a stupid King Kong ride. I can't get over that. And people defend Universal, and I think for the most part they've made some pretty wise decisions. Harry Potter, Transformers is another one that I think is a pretty wise decision going with them. Such a great ride.
Talked about that.
But to stick with King Kong, you're getting rid of all the crap. You got rid of Jaws. You got rid of all this old stuff that people don't really care about. Why are you trying to resurrect King Kong? Like, come on. How many times have they tried to do it in the theaters? And just Jurassic Park 1 has outsold all the King Kong movies combined. So that's my rant.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but people have never raved about the King Kong ride over at Hollywood like they did the Transformers ride.
No.
I mean, it made sense to get the Transformers ride to Orlando because there's a bigger draw here, and people said that was arguably one of the best dark rides of all time, and I agree. I think it's my favorite.
Yeah.
I didn't hear anything close to that.
No.
I've never been to Universal Hollywood. What is the Jurassic Park ride over there? Is that a water ride as well there?
It's essentially the same exact thing. It's
It's just called Jurassic Park the Ride?
Yeah, there's a few
instead
minor
of Jurassic Park River Adventure?
Yeah, there's a few minor differences, but for the most part, it's the same exact ride. When you start getting over into Universal Singapore is when you start seeing a new Jurassic Park that they actually have a traditional circular raft ride where they go through as a river rapids.
Right, I've seen that.
And then
I'm looking at it right now.
The new one over that they just announced a new Universal for China, and I believe that there's another Jurassic Park ride schedule that might be more like the one in Singapore with a raft that utilizes some pretty cool stuff too, that people are beginning to hint at that as being pretty cool. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's just like, I don't get it. I don't get it why you're not expanding Jurassic Park at this point. Like, come on, you're Universal. It's your movie. You should know the marketing force going behind it. Like, I find it really hard to believe that the park is taken by surprise that Jurassic World is going to be a big movie in the summer of 2015. Like, you're telling me that nobody knew that was going to happen before you start designing a King Kong ride to be put over there? Come on. If that is the case, that just shows a lack of communication within its own company. At some point, like, communicate. Yeah. Tell me what's.
I'm watching the King Kong video right now from Universal Hollywood.
Yeah, not much to watch there. There is a dinosaur in it though, because they used the King Kong, the most recent Peter Jackson King Kong that actually had a T-Rex inside of it. But it's stupid. It's
right.
Not.
Yeah, I see that.
It's not even a T-Rex. It's a V-Rex. So. Stupid. But anywho, I can't rant about that. But I think let's shift over to Disney now, because Disney's taken this huge risk too with their big project down the road. Well, obviously Star Wars, they just announced this week that coming in the next few years, Star Wars is going to be a major part of Disney World. So we know that's coming.
Yeah.
But then the other big project that's already gone vertical is Avatar. And this is really Disney doesn't really take this big foray into things they don't own. Like, they did it with Indiana Jones and Star Tours.
No, they don't.
But, Indiana Jones and Star Tours, they have it now. But even when they did, they really didn't go all in on it. It was just two little sections of the smallest
one attraction
park.
Or a show.
Yeah, so, like, it's the smallest park with the smallest sections. But now with Avatar, they're going all in this, and they don't own it at all. And I find that surprising too.
Right, they're going with a full-blown land with, quite honestly, a movie that didn't do as well as it was supposed to. Everyone made it was going to be the biggest movie since Titanic, and it was. It's like
it broke records.
Yeah, but I heard that people didn't like it. Like, people said that it was going to be like the movie to end all movies, and Most people that I talked to said they thought it was good, but they didn't think it was as spectacular. They got caught up with disappointment. Everyone said it wasn't that it wasn't good. It wasn't that it wasn't a good movie, but it wasn't good enough to live up to the hype. And I think that's where it came in, which is why I think people are surprised. And it's almost like the Star Wars deal a couple years ago and the Lucasfilm deal came out of nowhere, because you could almost picture the Disney people like being like, we should have waited. it's like instead of Avatar, just build like the Wookiee planet, build a Wookiee land or something like that. And as I heard someone call it, I think it was on Big Bang Theory, it was like, just build a land for space bears so they can walk around in the animal kingdom. But I wanted to throw this out there because it just happened over the weekend about Universal. What are the odds? What are the odds that Universal tries to purchase some intellectual property from Katy Perry and does a Hollywood Horror Nights maze themed to those little sharks that were dancing on the Super Bowl stage?
Well, our good friend,
it's Bill and Ted's.
Yeah, Bill and Patty's posted today that for sure those sharks will be in Bill and Ted's. No doubt about it.
Bill and Ted's.
There will be sharks in it. Oh, my goodness, yes.
So anyway, I got sidetracked there. I wanted to bring that up because I saw that today. I thought that was funny. Every girl crazy about a shark-dressed man. Anyways.
But what's also interesting about Avatar is it doesn't fit the Disney image. There's a lot of guns in it, a lot of shooting.
No.
There's swearing in it. Like I'm thinking to myself, like anytime you walk into a Disney store and they have like old Disney movies playing in the background or like on a TV somewhere, like I don't ever see Avatar.
I'm gonna have Avatar playing.
Avatar will never be playing at the Disney store. And it's just like, how do you cover all that stuff up? Like, because that kind of, to be honest with you, that kind of brought in a lot of people. Like, there's a lot of people that love Avatar that want to be blue people or whatever. And it was all that extra, like, sexual stuff and violence that really sold it to them. I don't know. You
just want a private meet and greet area.
Put your tails together.
No. Well, here's the thing. And the interesting thing about the whole Avatar land and Pandora, that's the name of the land, right? Pandora.
Yeah.
It's
planet.
There's going to be 2 rides, right? Yeah. There's going to be 2 rides, right? You're going to have an indoor dome themed, like, flying simulator ride, which is essentially going to be soaring. But you're going to be going over Pandora more.
I hope it's better because.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping the projection is better because I'm hoping the projection is the type of projections we see on, like, the upgraded Spider-Man and Transformers and Gringotts as opposed to the original Forbidden. Because it was funny, everyone was talking about how Forbidden Journey's projections look so clear when they rode when it first opened and before Spider-Man was upgraded. And then they upgraded Spider-Man, got Transformers, and now Gringotts, and now Forbidden Journey's projections look like crap. Yeah. Because they're not the high def that the other ones are. So I think it could be better in that regard. But the other ride is kind of like a C or C plus ticket, and it's going to be like a boat ride, almost like the first part of the Jurassic Park River Adventure without like the drop and the intense part and everything. And you're just going to be going. You see, sort of, but it's going to be going through Pandora, and that sounds really cool. I mean, obviously it's gonna be like a Jungle Cruise style thing, but that could work. That could work. I mean, it's another attraction because Animal Kingdom doesn't have a lot of rides, so it kind of parallels the safari in a nice kind of way.
I think it really depends on how it's done, and I think what it's going to come down to is how the lighting effects are done, because the coolest part of the Avatar movies are the night portions where everything starts to light up and that's what it's going to come down to. And I don't know if the boat ride's going to be indoors or if it's just going to change at night, but I could see there being a huge line at night if it's really an outdoor ride and your experience changes that greatly for the nighttime portion. I don't know how it's going to be, but I did hear for the flying thing that you're going to board the Banshee. The bird things, the animal pterodactyl things are called Banshees. So we're going to stick with that name for that too. But it's good, like the thing's going to breathe.
Be purple or pink?
Oh, Good question. But the Banshee's
We're all over the place.
Yeah, the Banshee's gonna breathe, and you're gonna be able to feel it breathe. It's gonna be kind of weird, I think. So it's not gonna be like Soarin'. It's gonna be like almost like I would think like a Peter Pan type, smaller ride vehicle that you're flying through stuff. So I don't know how that's gonna work at all, but they say it's gonna work.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, boy, you could really do. I don't know. The whole idea of having a soaring type ride is just a little strange to me. It seems like I've kind of done that already. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe, and I probably sound hypocritical because Universal is nothing but the same simulators over and over and over. But I don't care. I don't care in that regard because they're so. It's like, I mean, I like Soarin'. I don't think it's the end-all, be-all of attractions. I didn't cry when I got off of it. Like, a lot of people say that it was such an emotional experience. They cry when they get off of Soarin', and I'm like, I'm not in that camp. Yeah, I'm not in that camp.
Soarin' was one of the worst rides I've ever ridden in my life. Seriously, it was so dumb. And
I don't know if I go that far, but the problem with Soarin' is if you're not in the front row, you see people's feet. You see the feet, so it ruins the illusion.
I was in the front row. It was terrible. I'm like, this is dumb.
So
like, they're spraying Febreze at you and thinking like it's a big deal. Like, come on. If I want the smell of oranges,
it's kind of like Europe in the air at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg.
God, terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible.
But at any rate, but you can see my point then. Yeah. If you didn't like Soarin', how is this? It better be better than Soarin', because if it's not, then
big flop.
Big flop. But yeah, well, and you could do this with Avatar Land, but I think you could even do it with an expansion of Jurassic Park at Universal. What about like a flying roller coaster similar to Air at Alton Towers that hugs the ground, and do it like pterodactyl themed?
Oh yeah.
You could do that at Jurassic Park, or you could do it to the creature, the Banshee creature thing from Avatar. I don't even know what the proper name is for it, but
it's a Banshee.
Okay. So you could do something like that, and another thrill right now. I know Disney isn't the type to do just a straight up roller coaster. Even Expedition Everest is largely indoors or themed, at least, or partially. Has indoor themed sections to it, and a Disco Yeti. But Avatar itself doesn't seem very family friendly. At least the Expedition Everest, aside from the fact that the Yeti, which you don't even see anymore, really, that is still very family friendly. And the dinosaur ride, I mean, it's scary for kids. But it's still family friendly, and that's in arguably the kiddie land of the park now, with Camp Minnie Mickey kind of gone. The Dino Land USA is kind of like your cheesy, colorful, animated kids land now, and Dinosaur just happens to be there. So now you are on the opposite end with this very adult-like property that they don't own. So it's interesting to see where it goes. I mean, and you and I were discussing this a little bit, and maybe this will kind of help wrap up the Disney Universal discussion here, is the whole deal with Marvel. And the way that I discussed it was, this is what I know about that deal. Disney now owns Marvel. From what I understand, the Marvel stuff at Universal is there, and it's just kind of there. It's not going away. It's never going to go away. That's allowed to stay there permanently. However, if Universal ever wants to do something Marvel-esque in that land to add it, it has to be approved by Disney. And they're not going to approve something epic that they could do. But the kicker is, Disney cannot do any Marvel-based attractions aside from like meet and greets and characters and stuff. They can't build any attractions Marvel-based in Florida for a certain amount of time. But as you were saying before we went on the air, Universal kind of has the option to renew that and keep that part of the contract alive indefinitely. So essentially, we'll never see anything major Marvel-based on the East Coast, at least not in the very near future that we can discuss. that doesn't keep them from doing anything on the West Coast because there's no Marvel stuff over at Universal Hollywood. So, but you could see if Universal came up with these plans and said, hey, we want you to approve this for Universal Orlando. And Disney can say, no, absolutely not. You can't do that because that's going to draw people away from us. Disney can take it and then go do it out in California.
Yeah, well,
but I don't know.
And from the Universal perspective, the only way I see it reverting, because like at some point, it's like this Mexican standoff that like Disney's not going to allow Universal to do anything. Universal is in this weird position because they can't expand on anything that they're doing, so they're kind of have their hands tied, but they don't really want to give it up either, because if they give it up, that means Disney's going to get it, and then they're going to build bigger stuff. So it's actually
right.
It's like this. It's like it's in the interest of Universal to just keep it and not touch it, because it prevents Disney from doing anything with it, and it's still a draw. At the end of the day, what they have there is still a pretty good draw. Like, even though they can't build anything new.
Yeah. And I mean, one of their best attractions in Spider-Man, one of their best attractions in The Incredible Hulk, a nice family thrill ride in the Storm Force Accelatron, I think it's called. Yep. And then you have kind of a lame excuse for a drop tower in Doctor Doom that never really has more than a 15 or 20-minute line. But, I mean, it's kind of your standard thrill ride that, people enjoy. So, okay, great. I skip it when I'm there because I've been on bigger and better ones. It's just the theming, and you can go walk in and say, oh, look, hey, Dr. Doom theme. Yeah. Cool. Fine.
Well, I think at this point, now that we're talking about some comic book characters, let's flip over to the other side of the coin here and look at Six Flags.
Yeah, the poorly done comic book characters.
And like you've said in the past, and the guys at Coaster Radio, it's like they just paint a roller coaster a color, call it Green Lantern, and that's basically
just because you paint it green and put question marks on the train doesn't make it a Riddler roller coaster. That's what he always says. He was talking about that when they moved Chang. He's like, just because you moved Chang to New Jersey and paint it green doesn't make it a Green Lantern roller coaster.
and essentially that's what they do there. They just put a basic color on it, put a basic name on it. So you have your Superman coaster at every park. You got a Batman coaster at every park. You're coming to the point where you almost have
put an S or a bat logo in the station or on the station and call it just slap it on and put some cardboard cutouts of the characters in the queue and put the Fortress of Solitude walkway to the station, and voila, you have something that you can call a Batman ride or a Superman ride.
But that could be changing this year, that we've already mentioned a few times, the Battle for Metropolis, and that you're going hardcore into the animatronics, into the lore, into possibly making a big, huge Hall of Justice, especially down at Over Texas. We already see that the one in Over Texas is probably going to be pretty epic. We're not quite sure about the one at St. Louis yet, because we really haven't seen anything from St. Louis on what they're planning there. But for the most part,
we haven't seen anything from Missouri Thrill Seekers recently.
True that. But yeah, so you're going hardcore into this, and really Six Flags has always been that we've seen them pull things out real quick too. That we talked about the Wiggles on the pre-show, how that was there for a few years and that's quickly been erased.
They had Thomas the Tank Engine for like a year, and then the big one was Terminator.
Yeah,
and Terminator Salvation. After that movie flopped, they were like, I don't think. Oh, Tony Hawk was the other one, because that affected like 4 roller coasters.
Yeah.
And I was we're just going to call it Big Spin now.
I actually really liked the Terminator Salvation ride, because like they had this little pre-show at the beginning with like these military troops and these moving robots that would try and attack you. And it was actually really cool. But like I said, with any pre-show on a roller coaster, after you've done it once, it's kind of pointless after that point. You're kind of like, just let me ride the damn roller coaster. I don't want to go through this pre-show every single time. So,
we were talking about it with the Dark Knight coasters, because it's like, especially Like, you have the one at Great America, I have the one at Great Adventure, and it's like, well, the pre-show is nice, and it kind of it adds a little bit of a story to it, and then if the theming is working in the ride itself, it seems like a little bit more than a wild mouse in a box, and, you actually go through some decent theme elements, but it's like, in that, okay, I know when he starts talking about the Joker or whatever, that the screen goes fuzzy, and then I know there's a big bang in the corner of the room, and then ha ha ha, and then you hear the Joker, and the word ha 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 is up on the inside of the wall, and then a siren goes off, and then you go in and you load into these little metro buggy things that go through the ride. Like, okay, I mean, it's a good attempt, but it's not on the level of like a Transformers or a Spider-Man or a Disney type thing. It's kind of a weak attempt, and who knows? Maybe that has to do with the fact that if they ever do lose the DC Comics stuff, they know that they can pretty easily just turn that TV screen off and take off all the actual Metropolis names and just kind of say, oh, okay, now instead of the Dark Knight roller coaster, it's the Escape from the Lost City roller coaster. And, it's still generic. Instead of Italian Job, it becomes the Backlot Stunt Coaster. Just make it generic subway escape from an evil guy in a city roller coaster. And it's like, Superman random flying over a big patch of grass with a metal station roller coaster. And Batman becomes random inverted flying over a city park and graffiti-laden factory roller coaster. Instead of Batman the Ride, it just becomes like, the Flying Knight or whatever, something that's almost, but not quite.
Well, maybe to wrap this up here, the question is we've talked about all of this, so maybe we just say intellectual properties, good idea or bad idea in general.
Oh boy,
that's tough, isn't it? It's tough.
Here's the problem. It's kind of like I keep plugging Coaster Radio tonight because they've had good discussions about this kind of thing before, and they're big into theming over there. The problem, and they asked a question I think a year or two ago about on-ride audio, and I think when you talk about on-ride audio or theming to roller coasters and theming to thrill rides and indoor dark rides, there's three options. There's yes, I want it, no, I don't want it, or option 3, where I think everybody would go, which is, yes, I want it if it's done properly. And I think that's where everybody would end up landing on this. So I think, and it's easy to say that's the easy way out. For me, a roller coaster, a B&M roller coaster, there's only so much you can do to theme that. You can't put that in a building. You can't put a 230-foot roller coaster in a building. And you can't make it so immersive that you forget you're on a roller coaster. A dark ride, like a simulator, like a Transformers, a Spider-Man, a Gringotts, you can put that kind of thing in a building and theme it well enough that you almost forget that you're on a ride. But as far as the roller coasters go, it's like Space Mountain, okay, it's like Space Mountain, you can almost forget that you're on a roller coaster in Space Mountain at times. Or like a Revenge of the Mummy, you can almost forget it. But a major thrill coaster like an Incredible Hulk or a Dueling Dragons, Dragon Challenge, great theming in the queue, but once you're outside, you're on a roller coaster, and you're on a roller coaster. And there might be some good theming elements around it, but you're still on a roller coaster. So for me, a roller coaster is more or less a roller coaster, whereas when you get into the dark rides and the simulators, that's where I want the immersive theming, because we've talked about it so many times about how Transformers and Spider-Man and Gringotts and even Despicable Me, and they're all kind of the same ride, aren't they? It's the same sort of ride system. The Simpsons, Men in Black, they're all kind of the same system. So how you differentiate yourself is how well you theme and how well you differentiate yourselves from the other rides that do the exact same thing. Spider-Man and Transformers, the exact same ride system, two completely different rides that rank among the best of their breed because they're so well done and they're so well themed and they're so perfectly executed, and probably my two favorite dark rides of all time. So for me, I want the high theming, and I'm okay with it being intellectual properties. That's fine. I'm okay with that, seeing that on the dark rides. The intriguing thing to me is these Triotech dark rides that aren't intellectual properties. They're coming up, Cedar Fair has started to come up with their own story, the Wonder Mountain's Guardian story. You can only do that at Canada's Wonderland. You can't make that story fit perfectly at any other park. Voyage to the Iron Reef, that is a story that's going to be specifically made for Knott's Berry Farm. So I'm interested to see that story, because it's something that the local fans can connect to, and it's something that only that park can have. But at the same time, I don't know, because it's not based off of an intellectual property, will it have the same mass appeal? And I don't think it will, because it's not a Harry Potter, it's not a Transformers, it's not a comic book, property that's been around for 30 or 40 years. It's not a Jurassic Park, it's not a Disney.
I think Cedar Fair is trading in some very deep and murky water there, because it's probably going to be a fun ride. It's probably going to be an exciting ride, but is it going to be an over the top hit? Probably not. Like we did not see that with Guardian. Like as much as you said it's popular at the park, it's not like this overwhelming thing that you hear in Chicago or in like Ohio. Hey, you got to go up to Canada's Wonderland to go ride, Wonder Mountain.
It's not like Banshee or Goliath. Banshee and Goliath made national headlines. I had people up here in Rochester, my buddy on the hockey team who lives in Syracuse. I know his parents well because they come to the games and whatnot. And they saw a TV commercial the Monday after Banshee opened. And they said to him, Matt, did you see this new roller coaster that just opened in Ohio over the weekend? And he's like, oh, yeah, Danny Miller was on it over the weekend. He rode it already. He was there for Media Day and opening weekend. Like, people in Syracuse, New York are hearing about a roller coaster built in Cincinnati, Ohio, and they're not theme park people. Yeah. People at home in Allentown were talking to my dad and be like, did Dan hear about that new wooden roller coaster with the loop that's being built in Chicago? And he's like, oh yeah, that's a lot of, he has a buddy who lives up there. People all over the country are hearing about these two rides. Wonder Mountain's Guardian, fantastic attraction, but it's not something you heard about even as close to here. People in Chicago don't hear about it. People in Texas don't hear about it. People in Florida outside of the roller coaster and theme park industry didn't hear about it. So it's interesting to see where and Cedar Fair has been good with the balance. They have Banshee and Wonder Mountain, so they're kind of picking and choosing when they're going to make these big headlines. Obviously, Voyage to the Iron Reef isn't the headliner of the Cedar Fair editions this year. It's Fury 325. So that's the one that everyone's going to be talking about.
Wait, it's not Rougarou? I thought it was Rougarou. No.
Sorry, but you get my point. So I mean, it's interesting to see where it goes, because again, like I said before, if it's done properly and it's done well, it has as a ride that's well themed has potential to be one of the greatest rides of all time. And then on the flip side of that, if it's only done, half-assed, for lack of a better term, you get things like you do at the Six Flags parks. And that's one thing I like about Cedar Fair. Cedar Fair knows that they're not going to be able to theme like Universal and Disney, so they just kind of don't do it all together. Yeah. Cedar Point has a themed area in Frontier Town, but they don't. Maverick, okay, you have some nice scenery, but there's not really a theme there aside from the station, but they keep it nice looking. And it's Michigan's Adventure, not a theme anywhere in that park, but it's a nicely. There's flowers, there's bushes. They're reasonably kept. Dorney Park, no theming whatsoever, almost anywhere aside from the story behind Hydra, but a very nice park. Nice foliage, flowers planted, very clean. That's something that Cedar Fair is good at. They keep their parks neat and clean, and they don't. Banshee has the nice story with Son of Beast, and they have the graves and the headstones. That's stuff that they don't really have to maintain over the years. They're not the special effects is just changing out light bulbs,
Yeah.
you know? Like, that's something that they can do. That's something you have to do anyway. They're not going for the whole, oh, well, we got to keep the cardboard cutouts up so that, you know, you see the Superman as you come around the third turn. You know, they know that they're not going to be able to match a Universal or a Disney with that, and I'm glad that they don't try to, because I think that's the trap Six Flags falls into, and it's one that we kind of discussed whether or not we were going to talk about, the Hard Rock Park, and how when that fell apart, it turned into the Freestyle Music Park, and everything had to go, everything had to be redone, and that's the trap you get into when you don't have a successful model, is when you try and do this and it's not successful, you fall into, you know, you hit a landmine, and it's just too big to recover. And we're seeing that with the former Hard Rock Park. It just couldn't recover from that first bad season. They spent too much money, and they couldn't make up the deficit. So when it works, it's fantastic and iconic, and when it doesn't, it can turn out pretty bad.
And I agree with you. I think another big point is you have to tread carefully when you're dealing with things that you don't own. I think that's a big issue that we discovered here. But you know, at the end of the day, like a themed ride, you know, kind of like maybe not for you, but for me, like I'm interested in comic books and sci-fi. So when I see like a Battlestar Galactica ride out at Singapore Universal, you know, I really want to ride it. But it looks like a shit-ass coaster, too. So, like, I want to ride it because it's Battlestar Galactica. I want to go experience it. But I know that after I experience it, I'm going to be like, what the hell did I fly to Singapore for to ride this thing? Like, it's just one of those things. Like, the same thing with Borg. I saw the commercials for the Borg ride. I'm like, oh, I really want to go down and ride that. And, you know, I went down and rode it as Nighthawk, and man, thank God I didn't spend any money to go ride that before.
Well, yeah, it's like if you took the mountain away for an Expedition Everest and all the theming away and just left it up there as a roller coaster.
Yeah, it's meh.
That's all it is. You put the theming around it, it becomes one of the most iconic rides in Florida, and a ride that everybody knows about. Same thing with like a Space Mountain. I mean, if you take Space Mountain and just put it outside, it's a decent roller coaster. Put it inside, put it at a Disney park, and put some excellent theming around it, and put it in the dark. It's one of your most iconic roller. Everybody knows what Space Mountain is. Yeah. If you go up to anyone on the street and say, "Hey, what's Space Mountain?" They'll say, "Oh, that's the ride at Disney." And almost everybody knows that. It's that iconic. And that's.
I think at this point we should wrap it up. So as always, thank you for joining us here on COASTER.net Uncut. I'm, of course, Andrew Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm Danny Miller from Rochester, New York. Don't forget if you haven't voted in our roller coaster poll yet, the deadline is coming up. By the time this show goes live, which will be on February 13th, you'll have 5 days left to vote. We've had a lot of participation, the most participation we've had yet, getting ready for thrilling 32 bracket release show, which will be coming up in 2 weeks from the time that you see this show. That'll be released right at the end of February, so you guys will have a couple weeks to fill out your brackets. It's going to be a close race. Every vote literally counts. I just got another one yesterday that changed the very last coaster into the bracket on the steel side. So every vote does count, and I know there's a few others that are going to get those in, so you can contact me if you need more information on that. But get those in. We're excited to have everybody taking part in that.
Well, I'm excited to see Raptor win again, and as always, ride on, Ride Warriors.
See you next time. Jesus.